For the ultimate Imagination Skyway experience, you can now create a free account over at patreon.com/Imagination Skyway to listen to podcast episodes without programmatic ads, engage with other listeners, and enjoy Imagination Skyway news episodes, or subscribe to one of our paid membership options for bonus episodes, weekly video calls, and many more surprises. Learn more and sign up today at patreon.com/Imagination Skyway. Welcome aboard Imagination Skyway, your grand podcast tour of the magic. I'm your host, Matthew Kroll, and in today's episode, I have the pleasure of chatting with Noel MacNeal, whom many Disney fans listening will recognize from his iconic role as Bear from the hit Disney show Bear in the Big Blue House. Now, while many of you might recognize him as Bear, Noel's career extends well beyond this Disney fan favorite, including time spent on Sesame Street, Eureeka's Castle, Little Shop of Horrors, Between the Lions, Blue's Clues, The Muppets Take Manhattan, the Book of Pooh, and many other productions. He's also an Emmy award-winning director, a writer, and the creator of his own YouTube show called The Show Me Show. In our discussion, we chat about his work on Sesame Street and Bear in the Big Blue House, advice from his mom, Disney parks and Give Kids the World appearances, and his upcoming show on March 24th, 2025, called Hey, This Was Really Fun, which you can attend live in New York City at 54 Below or stream from the comfort of home. At the end of the show, we'll return to Imagination Central, where I'll share ways in which you can stay connected with Imagination Skyway, how you can discuss this topic with others, and how you can help support and inspire the future of this show. Please remain seated, keep your hands and arms inside the podcast at all times, and enjoy your grand circle tour aboard Imagination Skyway. Noel, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I am really glad to get the chance to chat with you.
Thank you for having me, Matthew. And by the way, my son is also named Matthew, so I'm in good company.
Yeah, I saw that we could talk about so many different things. I saw that he is also going to be performing at 54 Below, so we'll maybe have to talk about that a little bit. But before we talk about your show, which I'm excited to hear a little bit more about, because this is a Disney-focused podcast, want to go back and talk a bit about Bear. And before we even get to that, I love to hear more about origin stories, we'll call them. So I know that obviously you've done throughout your career a lot of work in puppeteering and voice work. When did that passion or interest first start for you?
I would say when I was a kid, there were a lot more puppet shows on TV. So there was Sherry Lewis and Lamb Chop. There was Paul Winchell and Winchell Mahoney Time with his characters, Knucklehead Smith and Jerry Mahoney. And by the way, Paul Winchell helped invent the artificial heart. So before becoming Tigger, he helped save lives. And there were shows like Captain Kangaroo, Mr. Rogers, local shows like The Magic Garden. But then I remember when I was a little kid, there was this half-hour show about this brand new kid show coming on. And it was hosted by two puppets. And up until then, I had seen, Bill Baird marionettes and Kugler, Fran, and Ollie were like traditional little puppets. But these puppets were different because one kind of had the shape of his head was like a banana, and the other kind of had a head like a football. And the names were Ernie and Bert. And they were talking about this brand new show coming on called Sesame Street. And, I was 7 years old. I knew how to count in the alphabet, but I just watched it for the Muppets. And so I just would watch their specials on The Great Santa Claus Switch and The Frog Prince and their appearances on, Dinah Shore and Flip Wilson. And then, of course, when I was in high school, that's when I watched The Muppet Show here in New York on 7:30 on Monday nights. And when it became time for college, I thought, well, if this guy Jim Henson and these people are able to make a living from this, maybe I could too. So there was no internet back in the 70s. So I went to the library, which is like Barnes and Noble, but free. And I looked up two colleges. And so I was going to present this to my mom. Now, my mom was a single mom. Um, Her husband, my dad, walked out on us when I was 18 months old. So she was taking care of an 18-month-old baby and her mother and her uncle until it was just me and her. And she took on a second job because I grew up in central Harlem. And when it came time to junior high and high school, it was either the school in the neighborhood where the kid got stabbed or where the kid got shot. So she took a second job to send me to private school downtown, the Rhodes Prep School. So here I am presenting the single mom whose cheating husband walked out, holding down a second job to send her kid to private school. And he says, I know what I want to be, a puppeteer. And you just kind of brace yourself for the impact. And she looked at me and said, okay, what do we have to do? Oh, okay. Well, there's this school and there's this school. Okay, what do we have to do? Right. Well, this is due then and this is due then. Okay, what do we have to do? That's all she kept saying, Matthew. She never belittled it. She never dismissed it. She never said, have a backup plan. She just kept saying, okay, what do we have to do? And at the end of all this, I said, and you're okay with this? And she'd been a private secretary. And she said, sweetheart, I've been typing the same letter for almost 20 years. You can always get a job. Don't get a job, get a career. And so I ended up going to Pratt Institute here in Brooklyn. And at that time, there was a theater department. And within the theater department, there was a puppetry course taught by the man who built Big Bird and Snuffy for Sesame Street, named Kermit Love. And no, the frog was not named after him. It's just a freaky coincidence. And instead of going back to Pratt for my senior year, his assistant on Sesame Street quit. And so he offered me the job. And so I went straight to TV puppetry, being the wrangler, the person who takes care of the puppets, and then transitioning to background puppeteer for Sesame and learning all about body puppetry from my friend and mentor, Carol Spinney. And now I'm a director for the show. So that's pretty much like the short version of everything that's happened. And there's a lot of stuff in between.
Yeah, of course. I love the encouragement you got from your mom, and that framework is probably helpful when you think about obstacles in your own career, not just I can't do it because of this obstacle, but well, what do we have to do to get past that block that's in our way? It's funny you brought up.
She also said, like, the other thing she said, I said, are you okay with this? She said, was like, yes. And if for some reason tomorrow you want to become a lumberjack, we'll figure out how to do that.
I love that. I'm glad you brought up Sesame Street too. It feels like a lot of performers got their start or in some way spent time on Sesame Street. I had the honor of chatting with Dave Goles last year, who similarly started on Sesame Street. What was your experience like? I feel like that, especially seeing it as a kid, 7 years old, getting to see Sesame Street, now getting to work there must be a surreal experience.
Oh yeah, because a part of Kermit, when I was taking Kermit's class in college, one of the field trips he took us on was to the original studio of Sesame Street on 81st off Broadway. And I remember the first time walking in and seeing the set, and I thought, it is so small.
That happens in New York.
Yeah, it's like, wow. And I would learn about camera angles and cheats later on. But it was still Sesame Street, and I still loved it. And then I remember the two things that threw me was that the lamppost was fake, but the mailbox was real. To get that clanging sound, it's like, yeah, okay. And then starting to work on Sesame, being the wrangler, I would attend the production meetings. So during lunch on certain days, you go upstairs, have the scripts laid out, and there'd be notes and what bits would make it through, and some bits because of time or because the writers weren't there. So sometimes the director, like John Stone, just didn't think it was funny. It was just like, cut, cut, cut. And that was back when Sesame was an hour. And so there would be the street story, whatever was happening on the street. There would be a morning show and then the afternoon show. And then after like a couple of weeks of that, there'd be like a week of like the Muppet inserts. And so that's when uh, Jim, who I got to know, Jim Henson and Frank would come in and work with Jerry Nelson and Richard Hunt and Fran Brill and the other puppeteers, Marty Robinson and Brian Mail at the time. And that's when they would do like, the Count's Castle and Ernie Bert's apartment and Grover in the restaurant with Fat Blue. And so it was just amazing, like all these people I grew up with. And now I'm suddenly like working with them and actually meeting and getting to know Jim. When I transitioned from being a wrangler to being a background puppeteer, one time I got to right hand for Jim with Ernie. Right hand means that Ernie's a practical hand puppet, so that Jim's right hand was up inside Ernie's head to make him talk, and his left hand was in Ernie's left hand, so that I was Ernie's right hand. So that's why Ernie's able to squeeze his rubber ducky. And we were rehearsing the bit, but they had to adjust the light. So they just stopped it. And that wrangler came over and asked, Jim, do you want me to take Ernie? He was like, no, I'm good. And I'm still attached to the man. And he looks back and he sees like two apple boxes, these wooden boxes. And he starts to go back. So I go back with him and we sit down on the boxes. And I'm just sitting there thinking like, okay, like you're right next to Jim Henson. Like say something, like ask him something. Somebody would give their right arm to be here. Well, they couldn't give their right arm because then they couldn't be a right hand. Focus, no, focus, just say something. And then I remembered what my mom always said. She said, if you want to get somebody to talk, ask them about their kids. And I knew Jim had, 5 kids, all grown up. So I asked him, like, Jim, how are the kids? And he just started telling me what each and every one of them were doing and what projects they were doing. And then it was time to get back. They were ready. It was time to get back to the bit. And he said, thanks for asking. It's like, yeah, no problem. So it was like, thank you, Mom.
Such a great piece of wisdom from your mom, for sure. I love all these little nuggets of wisdom that she has are incredible.
It's lasted me this long, yes.
Yeah, of course. It's great advice. Let's shift to Bear in the Big Blue House. Again, like I said, a lot of listeners either grew up with Bear in the Big Blue House or are perhaps discovering it for the first time because it is on Disney Plus. In fact, speaking of kids, my 3-year-old daughter, I introduced her to Bear in the Big Blue House a couple of years ago, and then we binge watched the entire series from start to finish over the course of several months, especially at night. It was a great way to decompress. How did that opportunity first come about with Bear in the Big Blue House?
I had gotten a call it was in March of 1997, and I gotten a call from the Jim Henson Company, like, no, come and audition for this character. And so I went in, and it was this big character who was for kids, and he was going to be the host of a game show. And I got inside this thing and did the bit, and I left. And by the way, the show did not get picked up. And so I went home, and then around like 4:00, that's when they called me again and said, no, there's one more character we'd like you to come and try out for. I was like, okay. So they faxed me, yes, kids, faxed the sides and the illustration of the characters. And I only lived 20 minutes away. So I got in a cab and I was looking at the sketch, and it was cute. It was these little critters all lined up, and behind them was this giant face of a smiling moon. And in between them was this very large bear. And I thought, okay. So I get out, I walk in. And as soon as I walk in, I'm told, use your own voice. What? We're the Muppets. We don't do that. But it was for 2 reasons. One, all day long, they had heard like Muppety voices, people coming in like, hi, I'm a bear. It's like, hi, I'm a big old bear. It's like, and they just didn't want that because 2, this show was designed for kids and their caregivers to watch together. So they wanted just a fairly like normal, soothing, calm voice. And so like, okay, at that time, I hadn't been married or had a kid yet. So I would do what's called my Uncle Noel mode, where when I would visit friends who had kids, I would just like, it's like kind of like that attitude where my voice gets kind of pitched up and I'm just in this mood of like, okay, whatever you want to do, I'm in. And so I got into the prototype, which was the puppet, the body puppet, but without the fur. But I could see through the netting to see the monitor and the camera. And it got inside and it felt so great. It felt so comfortable. And I thought, wow, I could really have fun with this guy. And then I realized, no, it's Friday. It's 4:45. They've picked out who they want. They're just making sure. So I said, eh, screw it. I'm just going to have fun. And I did. I just like ran around, did all these things. And then in the script, when it came time to, suddenly realize there's a smell and it's the viewer, I just jammed the nose all the way into the camera and pulled it out with the response, it's you. And then did it again and pulled it out and did the rest of the bit and thanked them and they thanked me. And I left and I just completely forgot about it because there's like no way I'm going to get this. And then the following Monday, just before 6 o'clock, that's when the Henson Company called me and said, no, we'd like you to be Bear in the Big Blue House.
That's incredible. You mentioned the nose bit. We'll have to talk about that. But before we even get to that, I want to know what it was like to perform Bear, because it's obviously different than, helping Jim Henson perform, a Muppet character. This is a full body puppet. So
Yeah.
How does that change the dynamic of performing?
Luckily, I'd gotten to know and worked with Carol Spinney, who created Big Bird. So Big
Right.
Bird is very similar to Bear, where you're inside, your right arm is up through the neck, and your hand is in the head to make the mouth move and the eyes blink. And then your left arm is in Bear's left arm or Big Bird's left wing, and there's a TV set, a little tiny monitor strapped to your chest with the microphone so that you're looking down. And so what you see at home is what I would see inside because I couldn't see out. So,
Amazing.
yeah, that was my only vision. And it's backwards. It's not a mirror, it's reversed. So if I had Bear like look to the left, to my left in the monitor, it looks like he's looking to my right. But because of years of training, because that's how TV puppetry and with the Muppets work, my brain just naturally knew how to do it. Because I couldn't see out, I remember going in the day before we started shooting and like walking around the set, especially the foyer, after Bear opens the door. And I just like started closing my eyes and sort of kind of like if you suddenly went blind and relearning how to get around your house. And so kind of like realizing how many steps from like the front door to like the middle of the foyer, from the middle of the foyer, and then walking gently back and then feeling the banister behind me and then being able to turn straight around and like walk up the stairs and how many stairs. And if you look at Bear now, there's a reason why there's a rug in the foyer and there's thresholds for the kitchen and the living room doorway, because this way I could feel it with my feet, like where I was.
That's incredibly smart to set it up that way.
Yes.
There are a lot of children's shows in existence, a few that are puppet based, plenty others that aren't. And I feel like there is something that is very different about Bear in the Big Blue House. And especially today, watching that show compared to some others, again, watching it with my daughter, it feels like you talked about your voice being a very calming, using that calm voice when you approach the character. What are some of the things, because people still watch it on Disney Plus, like what are some of the
Thank you for
the
that.
aspects, of course, what are some of the aspects of the show that you think make it special or different, especially compared to some other programs that are out there?
Before Bear returned to Disney Plus, I would get fan email from parents, thanking me for the show. What a great like part of their childhood for their child. But especially from parents of kids of autism and special needs, and how it was just this great calming um, aspect that they could actually watch. And some of them like still watch it. And I think it's because, well, it's because with autism and special needs, um, having done research, because I've been trying to develop my own show for YouTube. I have a YouTube channel called The Show Me Show, and it's for autistic and special needs individuals. And I've been trying to develop into a full show. And so I've done research into it. And so because of Bear and his friends are very like simple in terms of facial expressions. And so it can be very hard to navigate like a human face because everything's moving, the eyebrows, the eyes, the mouth. And but with Bear, Bear had his nose and his eyes and occasionally would blink and like that was it. And the other characters, so you just gotta and that's also a credit to, Peter Lentz and Tyler Bunch and Vicky Eidner and Jim Krupa to be able to convey such emotion with these characters whose facial expressions didn't move. But through their voice and through body acting, we were able to convey like when we were happy, when we were frustrated, when we were sad, when we were sleepy. And so those kind of like that simplicity really helps convey and helps people with autism and special needs and on the spectrum like navigate. And so a lot, and it was just also a very sincere show. It wasn't loud. It wasn't in your face. It wasn't constantly throwing something at you. It was just very calming. And so that's why it was designed that way, so that kids and their caregivers could sit together and enjoy the day. And then ideally, they would then continue their day together and do something, possibly what Bear and his friends were doing, maybe cooking something in the kitchen or going for a walk or doing something together. So it's that kind of show that it was very special for its time. And we did the show and we knew it was fun and sweet. We had no idea that this would be like a legacy for people and that the grown kids would now be introducing their kids to it. I'm on this app called Cameo, and I have a puppet of Bear. So it's a puppet of a puppet, which is very meta. And I do greetings for like birthdays and the holidays and like Valentine's Day. And so many, it's because of the kids who grew up are now introducing their kids to Bear. So like for 1-year-olds and 18-month-olds. But now I'm also getting videos from the grown-up kids wanting Bear to greet their parents because their parents and them used to watch Bear. So if like for Dad's birthday, like could Bear say happy birthday? And so Bear said, it's been a while since you and Kevin have been by the Big Blue House to visit us. And so yes, it's just like, it just goes through these little like legacy steps of, and we had no idea this was ever going to happen.
Yeah, I love how that's transcended generations, and I expect it should continue because it is such a special piece of Disney history, and it's an incredibly special show. I guess a couple more questions about Bear before we move on. We talked about the nose bit, and then there's also the goodbye song, which is another piece. There are pieces that are formulaic and always a part of the show. How do you decide, especially back then, there wasn't the internet, there wasn't social media. Like, how did you decide what was going to end up being a consistent part of every single episode and what might have perhaps fallen by the wayside and just sort of cut from the show after that?
That's actually credit to Mitchell Kriegman, who actually created the show. Previously, he had done for Nickelodeon Clarissa Explains It All. So he came in, Henson asked him to come in and create the show for the new division of Disney Channel devoted to kids, Playhouse Disney. And so he looked through the files and the Henson Company and noticed that there was a file about a bear and a house. And at that time, in the files, the house had a personality. The house talked. But then he rejiggered it so that Bear was still like the primary homeowner, and then all these little critters. And then over time, it's developed that, for instance, Bear's voice, my voice, was this sort of adult, kind of normal sounding voice. Luna, who was Lynn Thigpen, had a very soothing adult voice. So it became sort of sounded like the adult characters would have these very distinctive but adult voices. Even Doc Hogg, that Tyler Bunch did, had this very distinctive, like, adult voice. But then any of the kid characters, then you could be cartoony and have these outrageous little voices. Um, and so there was like early on there was a poll taken from fans, from kids, like it's like who your favorite characters are. And I remember like number one was Bear, and like number two was Luna, number three was the house, and number four was Tutter, and like it went down from there. But it was just like the house. Like, okay, that's fine. And then it reminded me, like, yeah, once upon a time the house talked, but that got fallen by the wayside. But yeah, and then Bear's one of those special characters for a kid show where Bear's an adult, because normally with kid shows and kid characters, the characters are kids. But Bear was an adult, so he could actually, legitimately, go into the kitchen and turn on the stove. That was okay. That's fine because he's an adult bear. And then it was nice when I could actually go on like appearances to like talk shows, and especially something like Hollywood Squares. And then Bear could be like, a little cheeky and like with grown up humor, and it's like, nothing off color, but basically just having fun with the other celebrities. And it was great with Hollywood Squares. Like Bear got to meet soap star Susan Lucci, wrestling star Randy Macho Man Savage, and like Whoopi Goldberg. And in fact, there were two versions of Hollywood Squares, one produced by Whoopi Goldberg, and then the next incarnation produced by Henry Winkler. So I got to be on the last shows of Whoopi, and Mitchell Kriegman asked, like, because I suggested, like, do you think she would like do a guest voice for Bear? And he was like, that's a great idea. Like, if you see her, like, ask her. So at the end of the show, I thanked Whoopi, and we were on the set. I thanked her, and I said, by the way, like, we would love if you would be a guest voice for an episode of Bear, but I gotta warn you, it's like, it's Disney Channel, it's scale, so they ain't gonna pay you any more than they absolutely have to. And she turned around and gestured to the ginormous, tic-tac-toe board set. And she's like, oh, honey, I'm fine. It's okay. I'd love to do it. And she did. It was an episode called The Great Bandini. And she's this critter. I think she's a possum who explains the concept of music to Bear and his friends, which is great.
That's wonderful. I almost forgot that she was in that episode. That's a great little reminder.
Yeah.
Last question about Bear, and then we can move on from here. The aspect of Bear that was really also very interesting is the fact that, few shows make their way to, especially because this podcast talks a lot about parks, to the parks. And so I know that, it made its way to then Disney MGM Studios. Now, of course, Disney's Hollywood Studios.
It will always be Disney MGM Studios to me.
We need to get you one of those T-shirts if you don't have one already. So I know that it made its way to a live stage show, which presents a lot of different complexities, because now you're producing a show that's going to run multiple times a day, and it's live, it's not pre-recorded. And I know that you also helped to, bring that production to the park. So are there any particular memories that stand out for you from that experience?
The performers down there are great. I'm still friends with like so many of them. And actually, the original show was called Bear the Big Blue House Live on stage. And so this was a mall show that just traveled around. And it had like this wonderful set of the house. And one of the things that Mitchell insisted on is that, Hip and Pop and Tutter and Trilo and Ojo, they not be performers in suits. They actually be the puppets, because that's what people used to seeing. And so they were slightly scaled up, but they were still like what you would expect to see, especially next to Bear. And so it traveled around, and it was so successful, and the show was so successful that Disney just bought it, lock, stop, and Blue House, and just put it into the soundstage. So the set you saw, that was the set that would travel around, and you just stayed there. And what was great was whenever I did appearances as Bear, for whatever reason, like for the Walt Disney World Christmas parades, um, I always ask, like, could I visit, a children's hospital? And in the area near Walt Disney World, is this great place called Give Kids the World, and it's for critically ill kids and their families to have, dream wishes and dream trips. And so I went there, and there was they had a little theater, and so I would do like a little 20-minute show for kids, and I was there, and they had families there. And afterwards, I said hi to like the kids and their families. And this one family, this one kid, they came, and I had no idea that her wish was to meet Bear. And they were going to go to the Disney MGM studios to see the show, and then afterwards have a meet and greet with Bear. And it was just by sheer coincidence that I happened to be there with Bear, so that Bear and her could actually talk to each other before doing this. Now, the show at the Disney MGM studios, they're not allowed to talk. And so Bear couldn't actually talk to her. So I covered by saying, I can't wait to see you at the show later today. But because we do more than one show, I have to save my voice for the next show. So I won't say hi when we take our picture together after the show. But
So smart.
But I want to have as many hugs from you as possible. So we took pictures there. And in fact, this goes back to wanting to see if there could be an attraction for Bear, because Bear was so popular on TV. And this was before the mall show. And so my family, my mom and my wife were going down for New Year's. And I went to Henson and said, like, if you send Bear down and Andrea, my wrangler, I'll do like a little meet and greet in the park, and we'll just test the waters. And they were like, really? He's like, yeah. So they did. They sent her down and sent Bear down. So they figured the best park that would make sense for Bear would be the Disney MGM studios. And so I got dressed, and we went out, and Bear stood by the Chinese theater. There's that wall between the Chinese theater and like the animation court. So it was like that,
Yes.
that wall. And Bear came out and just stood there and just like waited. And then people were walking by and suddenly did this double take. And then suddenly all these people just start running over. And of course, like, it's me. And so I'm like saying hi and taking pictures, getting hugs and all that. And the Henson people and one of the park people, Rick Bell, who was our guide, who was great. He's there watching, and the Henson PR person watching. Suddenly, this MGM cast member comes over and leans in to Bear and says, "You can't talk." And Bear turns to him and says, "What?" and he looks up at Bear's face and says, "You can't talk." It's like, and Bear says, "Yes, I can. Watch me." And then turns around and goes right back to talk. And then he runs over to like Brick and like the Henson people. It's like, he's not allowed to talk. And they said, "It's okay. It's Bear." It's like, yeah, but it's like, our characters don't talk. And they were like, "No, it's the Bear from the show. It's okay." And before I left, he asked if we can get a picture, and I took a picture with him. So yeah.
That is hilarious. I love that story. That's so cool. I can't even imagine being in that position and having Bear talk back to me and not realizing who it is. That would have been a very surreal moment. So, we could spend so much time talking about your career, but I definitely want to talk about your show. So you're performing at 54 Below in New York City, bit of a trip from Orlando for those who are local there, but it's called Hey, This Was Really Fun. Obviously a bit of a callback to Bear in the Big Blue House, but I know it extends beyond Bear. So how did the idea for this production come about?
You can thank a pandemic for that, because when you're locked in and you need something to do, I started thinking of like the stories of my career and all these things that have happened. And my wife, Susan Elia MacNeal, the author of the Maggie Hope Mysteries, available on Amazon, she said, why don't you write your autobiography? And I was like, okay. So I started organizing it, and it's available on Amazon, called Hey, This Is Really Fun. And so I got to the point now, with my life, it was just like I'm a dad whose kid has gone off to college, and suddenly it was just like, okay, because my father had abandoned us when I had my son. It was just like, okay, I'm going to be the dad I never had, which is why I was nicknamed the overachiever dad, because I would just volunteer for everything in elementary school and be there for everything. So suddenly now, when your kid's off to college, it's like, okay, so now what? What am I going to do with this time and this energy? And then I've had friends who perform, who've done cabaret shows, and I thought, cabaret show, I was like, that's a bucket list item you don't hear very often. And so, yeah, I decided I wanted to do it, and I'm working with Michael Kirk Lane, who is the cabaret guru and sensei. He does courses here in New York at the 92nd Street Y. And my music director is John Bronston. And the show, what I've learned about cabaret, it's not like when you go to a cabaret and you see somebody standing up there singing, they're not just singing. It's not karaoke night. It's it's all about the story. It really is a story. And it's a journey that this person wants to take you on. So for me, this show is about my life. That includes puppetry and the people and characters I've met along the way. And it's has songs that reflect that. And so I'm doing it at 54 Below on Monday, March 24th, here in New York City. And if you go to the website and you happen to be in the area, you can get tickets. Now there's also the live stream available. So if you can't make it to New York and want to sit in the comfort of your own home in California or Ireland, you can watch.
I love it. I'll definitely make sure everybody knows where to go for that, and your wife's books. We'll make sure we plug those as well. Last question I have for you then is, what experience are you hoping that viewers and those attending in person or virtually will take away from the show?
This show, I mean, it's all about my life, and a lot of my life is philosophy. Really comes from my mom, who was so optimistic and so positive. And one of the things she said to me once was dreams do come true. Some just take a little longer than others. And so that's really what I go with. And the fact that, not everybody has a mom like Enta MacNeal, who right off the bat says, yeah, you want to be a puppeteer? Sure. Because very often people, will believe in everybody else, their parents, their teachers, their clergy, their politicians, but they won't believe in themselves. And so you got to start with yourself. And then if you believe in yourself, then that will channel to somebody else also believing. It's hey, if he can do it, maybe I can do it. So that's really the philosophy of my show. It's just look at me. I've done all this. And it's and whatever you want to do it. Try it. Life is short. Go for it. And that's what I'm doing here. So it's if you have a dream, try and make it come true.
I love that takeaway, Noel. And it all comes back to your mom, beginning and end. We'll have to all thank your mom for helping to bring your career to life. That's right. The circle of life. Well, no, this has been, I was actually going to say this has been really fun. That's really funny.
Well, I hope you liked it too.
Thank you so much for taking time to come onto the show. And again, I'll make sure everybody knows where to go to check out this event, and perhaps even follow you on Instagram, because I know you've got an active Instagram account as well.
Thanks so much.
Welcome back to Imagination Central. I first want to offer a very special thank you to Noel and the 54 Below team for this discussion. It was a sincere honor to get to chat with Noel, and as Luna says, we hope you liked it too. As we mentioned in this episode, be sure to check out Noel's upcoming show, which you can learn more about at 54below.org. That's the number 54below.org. And follow Noel on Instagram at NMacNeal and on TikTok at Noel MacNeal. I'll include links to all those places in the description of this episode. If you haven't done so already, be sure to create a free Imagination Skyway account over at patreon.com/Imagination Skyway. I am continuing, as I say, to turn this into your one-stop shop for Imagination Skyway content, podcast episodes, and more. So definitely be sure to create a free account there, or consider signing up for one of our paid subscription options for even more surprises and bonus episodes. If you already have an account and are listening on the Patreon app already, be sure to leave your thoughts about today's discussion directly on this episode. It's one of my favorite features of Patreon. Remember, you can also engage with the show on social media by searching for Imagination Skyway on your favorite app or heading to imaginationskyway.com. I've got links for you there. And if you're ready to book your next Disney vacation, or if you have questions as you prepare for your next Disney trip, be sure to contact our travel partners and sponsors at KMV Travel. KMV is a boutique travel agency that helps families plan personalized vacations and create unforgettable memories on land and at sea. Having personally met and worked with Kelly and her entire team, I wholeheartedly believe that this is a group that can really help to make your Disney vacation even better, perhaps save you some money. And I encourage you to get started today by visiting kmvtravel.com/skyway, or find KMV Travel on social media and let them know Imagination Skyway sent you. As you disembark, please remember to remain fully seated until the podcast comes to a complete stop. Then gather your belongings and watch your head and step as you exit. Thank you so much for riding aboard Imagination Skyway, and remember, if we can dream it, we can do it.